Kethvar stared at the datapad in his four-fingered hands. The assignment seemed simple enough. Study the humans. Learn their military ways. Report back to the Galactic Dominion Council. It was routine work for a military analyst of his rank. The Zephyrian adjusted his position in the command chair aboard the research vessel Silent Observer. His pale blue skin reflected the soft glow of the ship's control panels. Around him, other crew members worked quietly at their stations. The ship hummed with the familiar sounds of hyperspace travel. Another primitive species study, Commander Velthak said as he walked onto the bridge. The older Zephyrian's voice carried the boredom of someone who had seen too many similar assignments. These humans barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. What could they possibly know about warfare that we haven't seen before? Kethvar nodded but kept reading. The initial reports painted a picture of a young species. Humans used crude kinetic weapons that fired metal projectiles. Their explosives were based on simple chemical reactions. Their ships moved slower than most galactic vessels. Their armor was thick but primitive. Everything about them suggested they were far behind the galactic standard. "Sir," Kethvar said, looking up from his datapad, "the humans have been involved in several conflicts since joining Galactic Society. Perhaps we should not dismiss them too quickly." Velthak laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Conflicts? You mean those minor skirmishes with pirates? Any species can fight raiders and criminals. Real warfare requires advanced technology, sophisticated tactics, and proper military discipline. These humans are barely evolved primates who discovered fire yesterday." Dr. Nixera entered the bridge carrying her own datapad. The xenobiologist's silver hair was tied back in the traditional Zephyrian research style. She had been studying human physiology for the past month. "The human body is interesting," she said without introduction. "They have higher pain tolerance than most species. Their adrenaline response is quite strong, but they are still organic beings with all the usual weaknesses. Nothing special about their biology suggests superior military capability." Kethvar returned to his reading. The humans had fought something they called the Terran Wars before joining Galactic Society. These were conflicts between different human groups on their home planet. The reports were confusing. Humans seemed to fight each other with the same intensity. They fought external enemies. This was unusual. Most species reserve their greatest military efforts for defending against outside threats. "Look at this," Velthak said, pointing to a tactical display. "Human weapons fire metal slugs." "Metal? We abandoned such primitive technology thousands of years ago. Their fastest ships barely reach half the speed of our standard fighters. Their shields are basic electromagnetic fields that any decent plasma weapon can cut through." The display showed recordings of human military exercises. Kethvar watched human soldiers march in formation. They carried rifles that seemed heavy and awkward. Their vehicles moved on tracks instead of hovering like proper military equipment. Everything looked ancient compared to galactic standards. "Yet they have survived every conflict they have faced," Kethvar observed. "Against pirates and raiders," Velthak repeated. "Show me how they perform against a real military force, and then we can discuss their capabilities." The Silent Observer dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of human territory. Through the viewports, Kethvar could see the yellow star humans called Sol. Their home planet was the third world in the system. From this distance, it looked like any other inhabited world. "Begin passive observation," Velthak ordered. "Full sensor sweep of all human military installations in this system. I want complete data on their defensive capabilities, fleet movements, and tactical doctrines. This study will be finished in 2 weeks, and then we can move on to more important work." Kethvar began setting up his monitoring equipment. The Silent Observer's advanced sensors could detect and record activities across vast distances without being noticed. They would watch human military operations from the safety of space. The first day of observations was exactly what Velthak expected. Human ships moved in predictable patterns. Their patrol routes followed standard defensive formations that any military academy student could identify. Their communication methods were simple radio transmissions that were easy to intercept and decode. "See," Velthak said after reviewing the first day's data. "Textbook defensive patterns. Basic communication security. Slow ships flying in straight lines. There is nothing here that would challenge a first-year military cadet. But Kethvar noticed something in the intercepted communications. Human pilots talked differently than other species he had studied. They used casual language mixed with technical terms. They made jokes during patrol flights. They seemed relaxed even while on military duty. Dr. Nixera, Kethvar called to the xenobiologist. In your studies of human psychology, have you noticed anything unusual about their stress responses? She looked up from her research station. They seem to handle stress differently than most species. Where others might become paralyzed or overly cautious under pressure, humans often become more active. Some of them even seem to perform better when facing difficult situations. Perform better under stress? Velfax shook his head. That makes no sense. Stress impairs judgment and reduces efficiency. It is basic biology. Kethvar made a note in his research log. Perhaps there was more to learn about humans than initial reports suggested. He decided to focus his observations on how humans responded to unexpected situations. The opportunity came sooner than expected. On the third day of monitoring, the ship's sensors detected an unidentified vessel approaching human space. The ship did not respond to human communication attempts and showed signs of weapons charging. Unknown contact approaching human patrol ship designation HV-47. The communications officer reported. Human vessel is requesting identification. Kethvar watched the tactical display with interest. The unknown ship was larger than the human patrol vessel and appeared to have superior weapons. Standard galactic protocol would be to withdraw and call for reinforcements. But the human ship did not retreat. This should be educational, Velfax said. Let us see how these primitive humans handle a real threat. The human patrol ship, commanded by Captain Jake Morrison according to intercepted communications, moved to intercept the unknown vessel. Instead of running away, the humans positioned themselves between the intruder and their space station. Kethvar leaned forward in his chair. This was not standard defensive doctrine. The smart move would be to avoid engagement until help arrived. But the humans seemed determined to fight despite being outnumbered and outgunned. The unknown ship opened fire first. Energy beams struck the human vessel's shields, causing visible damage. But instead of retreating, the human ship returned fire with its primitive kinetic weapons. Metal projectiles struck the enemy ship's hull. Fascinating, Kethvar whispered. They are not running away. The engagement lasted only minutes, but those minutes changed everything Kethvar thought he knew about human warfare. The outgunned human ship did not try to win through superior firepower. Instead, they used tactics that seemed almost reckless. They made sharp turns that should have been impossible for their ship design. They fired their weapons while performing complex maneuvers that required incredible skill. Most importantly, they never stopped fighting. Even when their ship was badly damaged, even when retreat would have been a logical choice, the humans pressed their attack. They fought until the unknown vessel was forced to withdraw. Impossible, Velfax muttered as he reviewed the sensor data. Their ship should not have been able to perform those maneuvers. Their weapons should not have been effective against that level of shielding. Kethvar made detailed notes about everything he had witnessed. The humans had won not through superior technology, but through determination and skill. They had refused to give up even when facing certain defeat. Perhaps this assignment would be more interesting than anyone had expected. 2 weeks into the study, Kethvar had filled several data files with observations. The humans continued to surprise him with their unusual military practices. Today, he was watching a large-scale training exercise in the outer system. Training exercise Gamma 7 commencing, came the voice of Captain Jake Morrison over the communication channels. The human officer sounded calm and professional. His ship, the HV Defiant, led a formation of 12 patrol vessels. Kethvar adjusted the sensors to get better readings on the human fleet. The ships moved in what appeared to be standard attack formations, but something felt different about how they flew. The spacing between vessels was tighter than galactic military doctrine recommended. The formation seemed more flexible, ready to change quickly. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez reporting ready status on all forward scouts, another human voice said. The female officer commanded 3 of the fastest human ships. Her vessels had moved ahead of the main formation, acting as eyes and ears for the larger force. Dr. Nixera looked over Kethvar's shoulder at the tactical display. Their formation flying is impressive for such a young species, she admitted, but they are still using primitive coordination methods. Radio communications can be jammed. Their ships lack the neural link systems that allow true unit coordination. Commander Velfax stood behind them, watching the exercise with obvious boredom. Standard attack patterns, he said dismissively. Frontal assault with basic flanking support. Any military academy teaches these tactics in the first year. The exercise began with the human ships approaching a series of automated defense platforms. These were training targets designed to simulate enemy positions. According to the scenario briefing Kethvar had intercepted, the humans were supposed to destroy the platforms while taking minimal casualties. At first, everything went according to standard military procedure. The human ships approached in formation. They exchanged fire with the defense platforms. Some ships took damage and fell back for repairs. It looked exactly like any other military exercise Kethvar had observed. Then something unexpected happened. The defense platforms adapted their tactics, as they were programmed to do. They began focusing fire on damaged human ships, trying to destroy them quickly. This was normal combat doctrine. Remove the weakest enemies first. But the humans reacted in a way that confused Kethvar. Instead of allowing the damaged ships to withdraw to safety, the healthy vessels moved to protect them. Ships that should press their attack instead turned to shield their wounded companions. This is tactically unsound, Velfax observed. They are reducing their offensive capability to protect units that are already compromised. It makes no strategic sense. Kethvar watched as Lieutenant Rodriguez's scout ship took heavy damage from 2 defense platforms. Standard procedure would be for her to retreat immediately. Her ship was badly damaged and posed no further threat to the enemy. But Rodriguez did not retreat. Instead, she continued her attack run even as her ship systems failed around her. Rodriguez, your ship is showing critical damage. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communications. Pull back immediately. Negative, Captain, Rodriguez replied. Her voice was strained but determined. I can still reach the primary target. Continuing attack run. Kethvar leaned forward in his chair. This made no sense. The human pilot was risking her life for a training exercise. There was nothing to gain by continuing the attack. Her ship was too damaged to be effective. But Rodriguez pressed on. Her damaged ship limped toward the largest defense platform, taking more fire with each passing second. Her shields were gone. Her weapons were operating at reduced power. By all logical measurements, her mission was hopeless. She is going to get herself killed in a training exercise, Dr. Nixera said in disbelief. At the last moment, Rodriguez's ship reached firing range of the primary platform. Her weapons, though damaged, still functioned. She fired everything she had at the target. The defense platform exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Rodriguez's ship, critically damaged and barely holding together, finally turned away from the battle. She had accomplished her mission despite impossible odds. But the cost had been enormous. Her ship would need weeks of repairs. Target destroyed, Rodriguez reported. Her voice was weak but satisfied. Mission accomplished. Kethvar stared at the tactical display in amazement. The human pilot had succeeded where logic said she should have failed. She had continued fighting long after any reasonable person would have given up. Incredible pain tolerance, Dr. Nixera murmured. Her bio readings showed stress levels that should have caused unconsciousness. How did she continue functioning? The training exercise continued for another hour. Again and again, Kethvar watched humans push themselves beyond what should have been possible. Ships continued fighting with systems failing. Pilots made attack runs while their vessels fell apart around them. Damaged units refused to retreat, choosing instead to keep fighting until their missions were complete. By the end of the exercise, the humans had destroyed all the defense platforms, but the cost had been terrible. According to Kethvar's calculations, they had suffered 40% casualties. In any real battle, such losses would be considered a disaster. Acceptable performance, Captain Morrison announced his fleet. Good work, everyone. Return to base for debriefing and repairs. Acceptable performance? Kefvar could not believe what he had heard. The humans had taken massive casualties, yet their commander called it acceptable. Any other species would have considered the exercise a failure. "Commander," Kefvar said to Velthak, in galactic military doctrine, "what casualty rate typically forces a retreat?" Velthak thought for a moment. Standard procedure calls for withdrawal at 15% casualties, 20% in desperate situations. No rational commander would continue fighting after losing 30% of his force. The humans took 40% casualties and called it acceptable performance. "Then they're either insane or lying to themselves," Velthak replied. "No species can sustain such losses and remain combat effective." But Kefvar had watched the entire exercise. The humans had remained combat effective despite their losses. They had continued coordinating their attacks. They had adapted to changing situations. They had achieved their objectives even while their forces were being destroyed around them. Over the following days, Kefvar observed more human military exercises. Each time, he saw the same pattern. Humans fought longer and harder than any other species would consider reasonable. They took casualties that should have broken their morale. Yet they kept fighting. More disturbing to his understanding of warfare, they seemed to fight better when the situation was hopeless. When facing overwhelming odds, humans became more determined, not less. When their equipment failed, they found ways to keep fighting. When their tactics did not work, they improvised new ones on the spot. "I am beginning to think we have underestimated these humans," Kefvar told Dr. Nixera during one of their research sessions. She nodded thoughtfully. "Their physiology alone cannot explain what we have observed. There must be psychological factors at work. Perhaps cultural conditioning that makes them view death differently than other species. Or perhaps," Kefvar said quietly, "they simply refuse to accept defeat." Commander Velthak overheard their conversation. "Refusing to accept defeat is not a military strategy," he said firmly. "It is emotional thinking that leads to unnecessary losses. These humans will learn this lesson when they face a real enemy instead of training simulations." Kefvar was not so sure. The humans he had observed did not seem like a species that would learn to accept defeat easily. They seemed like a species that would keep fighting no matter what the odds. The thought both fascinated and worried him. What happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object? What happened when a species that never gave up faced an enemy that could not be defeated? Perhaps he was about to find out. His sensors had detected increased pirate activity in the nearby sectors. It was only a matter of time before the humans encountered real combat situations. When that happened, Kefvar would finally see what human warfare looked like, when the stakes were real and the enemy was shooting back with intent to kill. The emergency alert came at 0347 hours, ship time. Kefvar was reviewing data from the previous day's observations when the communications array detected a distress signal from Kepler Station, a joint research facility operated by humans and several alien species. Multiple ships approaching Kepler Station. The station's automated defense system broadcasted. Ships are not responding to identification requests. Weapons signatures detected. All personnel prepare for possible hostile contact. Commander Velthak hurried onto the bridge of the Silent Observer. "What is the tactical situation?" he demanded. Kefvar's fingers moved quickly over his control panel, bringing up sensor readings on the main display. 7 ships approaching the station. Configuration matches known pirate vessels. The station has minimal defenses and maybe 200 people aboard. "Perfect," Velthak said with satisfaction. "Now we will see how these humans perform in actual combat instead of training exercises." Dr. Nixera joined them on the bridge, carrying her portable scanner. "The station personnel includes 47 humans," she reported. "The rest are various alien researchers and support staff." Kefvar focused the sensors on Kepler Station. The research facility was not designed for combat. It had basic shields and a few defensive weapons, but nothing that could stop 7 pirate ships. According to his calculations, the station should surrender within minutes to avoid unnecessary casualties. "This is Major Lisa Chun, Station Security Chief," came a human voice over the emergency channel. "All civilian personnel report to designated safe areas immediately. Military personnel report to combat stations." Major Lisa Chun. Kefvar had read her file during his research. She commanded a security force of only 12 humans and 8 alien guards. Against 7 pirate ships, her force was hopelessly outnumbered. Kepler Station, this is Captain Razor, the pirate fleet burning sword, came a harsh voice over the communication channels. We know you have valuable research data and rare materials aboard. Surrender now and we will allow civilian evacuation. Resist and everyone dies. Kefvar expected Major Chun to begin evacuation procedures immediately. The smart choice was obvious. Save the civilian lives and sacrifice the material goods. Any reasonable commander would make that decision. Captain Razor, Major Chun responded calmly. This is Major Lisa Chun. You are ordered to leave the system immediately. Any attack on the station will be met with full defensive force. Velthak laughed. Full defensive force? What does she think she can do with 12 humans and basic station weapons? The pirates opened fire first. Energy beams and missile barges struck Kepler Station's shields. The defensive barriers flared bright blue and began to weaken under the assault. At this rate, the shields would fail within 10 minutes. But Major Chun did not order surrender. Instead, she began coordinating a defense that defied all military logic. Sergeant Danny Murphy, take your team to engineering, Chun ordered. I need you to reroute power from the research labs to the shield generators. Ma'am, that will shut down all the science equipment, Murphy replied. Do it anyway. We need those shields. Kefvar watched in fascination as the humans began converting their research station into a fortress. Scientists and engineers who should have been evacuating instead started modifying equipment for combat use. Doctor, can you rig the atmospheric processing system to vent in sections? Major Chun asked someone off-screen. I think so, came the reply. But that would make those areas uninhabitable. Perfect. We can use it to channel the pirates into kill zones. Velthak stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They are turning their own life support systems into weapons. This is madness. But it was working. When the pirates finally breached the station's shields and began boarding, they found themselves facing defenses that had not existed in any blueprint. Corridors filled with toxic gas. Doors that had been welded shut, forcing invaders into narrow passages where human defenders waited with improvised weapons. Sergeant Murphy had turned maintenance tools into deadly devices. Welding torches became flame weapons. Industrial cutters became surgical instruments of destruction. Even cleaning supplies had been converted into explosive devices. How are they doing this? Dr. Nixero whispered. They are using equipment designed for peaceful research as military hardware. Kefvar was taking detailed notes. The humans were not just adapting their equipment. They were thinking in ways that no military manual had ever described. They were fighting a war using tools that were never meant for warfare. The pirates, despite their superior numbers and weapons, began to take heavy casualties. They had expected to face standard defensive positions with predictable weapons. Instead, they found themselves in a maze of death traps created from research equipment. Sector 7 secured, Murphy reported. The pirates tried to cut through the blast door, so we vented the entire section. The ones who didn't suffocate got taken down by the automated sample collectors I reprogrammed. Sample collectors? Kefvar muttered. They turned laboratory equipment into automated weapons? The battle raged for 3 hours. By all calculations, the station should have fallen within 30 minutes. But the humans kept fighting, kept adapting, kept finding new ways to turn their disadvantages into advantages. When the pirates knocked out the main communication system, the humans switched to hand signals and written messages. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they built new weapons from spare parts. When sections of the station lost life support, they put on emergency suits and kept fighting. Most amazing to Kefvar, they never stopped coordinating as a unit. Even without their advanced communication systems, the humans maintained perfect tactical awareness. They seemed to know instinctively where their teammates were and what they were doing. This is impossible. Velthak said for the 5th time, no species can maintain unit cohesion without technological assistance. How do they know what each other is thinking? The answer came during the final assault on the station's command center. Major Chen's team was down to half strength and almost out of ammunition. The The pirates had regrouped and were making one last push to capture the facility. Kefvar watched as Chin gave her final orders, but she did not use words or hand signals. She simply looked at each of her remaining soldiers, and they understood what needed to be done. Sergeant Murphy nodded and moved to the left corridor. Private Johnson took the right. Lieutenant Sarah Williams positioned herself at the central choke point. They moved like parts of the same organism, each knowing their role without being told. The pirates charged into the command center and found themselves trapped in a crossfire that had been set up through pure intuition. The humans had anticipated every move the pirates would make and positioned themselves perfectly. When the shooting stopped, 12 pirates were dead or wounded. The human defenders had suffered only minor injuries. Captain Razor, the pirate leader, surrendered rather than lose any more of his crew. Kepler Station secure, Major Chin announced. All hostile forces neutralized or captured. Beginning damage assessment and casualty reports. The final count was shocking. The pirates had lost 37 crew members and 2 ships. The humans had lost no one. 3 civilians had minor injuries, but not a single defender had been killed. How? Velfak asked a question that was bothering all of them. How did 12 humans defeat 37 armed pirates? Kefvar studied his sensor readings and tactical analysis. The answer was disturbing to everything he thought he knew about warfare. They did not win through superior firepower, he said slowly. They did not win through better technology. They won because they refused to fight by the rules everyone else follows. Dr. Nixera nodded thoughtfully. They turned a research station into a weapon. They used their own life support systems as tactical advantages. They coordinated without technology through some form of intuitive understanding. But most importantly, Kefvar continued, they never considered surrender as an option. Even when defeat seemed certain, they kept fighting. They kept adapting. They kept finding new ways to win. Commander Velfak was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was no longer dismissive. Perhaps we should continue our observations for longer than originally planned. These humans may be more interesting than we first thought. Kefvar agreed completely. The humans had just shown him a form of warfare he had never seen before. They fought not just with weapons and tactics, but with creativity, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. He was beginning to understand that human military capability could not be measured by their technology or their numbers. It had to be measured by their willingness to keep fighting when everyone else would have given up. The question was, what would they do when facing an enemy that was truly impossible to defeat? 3 weeks after the Kepler Station incident, Kefvar found himself following a small human patrol fleet into the disputed territories near the Galactic Rim. The area was known for pirate activity and territorial conflicts between various species. It was exactly the kind of place where a military analyst could observe real combat. Commander Rick Torres led the human patrol in his ship, the HV Guardian. He commanded 5 vessels total, 3 patrol ships and 2 fighters. It was a small force for such dangerous space, but the humans seemed confident in their abilities. Sensors are picking up debris fields ahead, reported Lieutenant Kate Sullivan from her fighter. Looks like recent combat. Multiple ship signatures. Kefvar adjusted his monitoring equipment aboard the Silent Observer. His sensors showed the same debris fields, but also something more concerning. Energy signatures indicated at least 12 ships hiding behind the wreckage. This was clearly an ambush. Commander, Velfak said as he studied the tactical display, the humans are flying directly into a trap. Should we warn them? No, Kefvar replied. Our mission is to observe, not interfere. Besides, I want to see how they handle a real combat situation. Dr. Nixera frowned at the sensor readings. Those ships hiding in the debris field are Vorten raiders. Their plasma weapons are far superior to human kinetic weapons. This will not end well for Commander Torres. The Vortens were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. Their technology was advanced, their tactics were brutal, and they showed no mercy to defeated enemies. If the humans were walking into a Vorten ambush, they were likely walking to their deaths. Unknown vessels in the debris field, Commander Torres announced over the communication channels. This is Commander Rick Torres of the Terran Patrol Fleet. Identify yourselves immediately. The response came in the form of plasma fire. Brilliant green energy beams lanced out from the debris field, striking the lead human ship. The HV Guardian shields flared and began to overload under the assault. Ambush! All ships, evasive maneuvers. Torres ordered. Kefvar expected to watch a massacre. The humans were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. The Vorthan ships were faster, better armed, and had the advantage of position. Standard military doctrine would be to retreat immediately and call for reinforcements. But the humans did not retreat. Instead, they did something that made Kefvar question his understanding of physics. The human ships began moving in patterns that should have been impossible for their design. They twisted and turned through space like dancers, avoiding plasma beams by margins so small that the sensors could barely measure them. How are they doing that? Dr. Nixera gasped. Those ships should not be able to perform such maneuvers. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan's fighter dove straight into the debris field, using the wreckage as cover. She fired her weapons at targets she could not possibly see, yet somehow her shots found their marks. 2 Vorthan fighters exploded before they could react. Sullivan, what's your status? Torres called out. Shields down, life support failing, but I'm still in the fight, she replied. Her voice was strained but determined. Kefvar checked the sensors. Sullivan's fighter had lost most of its primary systems. Her ship was flying on emergency power alone. Yet she continued her attack run, diving deeper into the enemy formation. She is going to get herself killed, Velthak observed. Her ship is critically damaged. She should retreat immediately. But Sullivan did not retreat. Instead, she used her damaged ship as a weapon. When her engines began to fail, she aimed her fighter at the largest Vorthan vessel and pushed the throttle to maximum. Sullivan, pull back. Torres ordered. That's a suicide run. Negative, Commander. Sullivan replied calmly. I can take out their command ship. Continue the mission without me. Kefvar watched in horror and fascination as the human pilot flew, her dying ship directly at the enemy commander. Vorthan plasma beams struck her fighter repeatedly, tearing holes in the hull. Her life support failed. Her weapons went offline. But she kept flying. The final moments were impossible to watch. Sullivan's ship was falling apart around her. According to the biosensors, she should have been unconscious from oxygen deprivation. Yet somehow she maintained control of her fighter until the very end. Her ship struck the Vorthan command vessel at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships instantly. Sullivan. Torres called out over the communications. There was no response. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan was gone, but her sacrifice had changed the battle. With their command ship destroyed, the Vorthan raiders lost their tactical coordination. The remaining human ships pressed their attack with renewed fury. Kefvar watched Commander Torres pilot his badly damaged ship into close combat with 3 Vorthan vessels. His shields were gone. His hull was breached in multiple places. Yet he kept fighting, using tactics that seemed designed by someone who had never read a military manual. When his main weapons were destroyed, Torres used his ship's emergency thrusters to ram enemy vessels. When his communications were knocked out, he coordinated with his remaining ships through light signals and formation flying. The battle should have been over in minutes. Instead, it raged for over an hour. The humans fought with a desperation and creativity that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They are using their damaged ships as weapons, Dr. Nixera said in disbelief. When conventional tactics fail, they improvise new ones. This is not normal military behavior. The turning point came when the humans stopped trying to win through superior firepower and started fighting like they had nothing to lose. They used their ship's emergency systems as weapons. They turned life support failures into tactical advantages. They fought with the fury of cornered animals. One by one, the Vorthan ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The humans never stopped pressing their attack, never gave their enemies time to regroup or coordinate new tactics. When the shooting finally stopped, only 2 human ships remained functional. Commander Torres and 1 patrol vessel. But the Vorthan raiders had been completely defeated. 8 enemy ships destroyed, for more retreating with heavy damage. Mission accomplished. Torres reported to his superiors. Sector cleared of hostile forces. Requesting recovery team for debris analysis and casualty reports. Kefvar stared at his sensor readings in amazement. The humans had won a battle they should have lost badly. They had defeated superior technology through determination, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Commander Torres. Kefvar heard a voice call over the human communication channels. "What are your casualty reports?" "We lost Lieutenant Kate Sullivan and her fighter." Torres replied. "2 ships heavily damaged but reparable. 17 wounded, none seriously. Considering the odds we faced, I'd say we got off easy." Got off easy? They had lost a ship and a pilot while fighting overwhelming odds, and their commander considered a light casualty count. "This changes everything," Velfax said quietly. He was no longer dismissive of human capabilities. They did not win through superior technology or numbers. They won through sheer determination. Dr. Nixera nodded thoughtfully. Lieutenant Sullivan continued fighting for 7 minutes after her life support failed. 7 minutes. Most species would be unconscious after 2 minutes in vacuum. How long can humans survive in space without life support? Kefvar asked. According to medical literature, maybe 2 minutes before unconsciousness, for minutes before brain damage, 6 minutes before death. Sullivan fought for 7 minutes and remained conscious the entire time. Kefvar made detailed notes about everything he had observed. The humans had not just survived an impossible battle. They had won it through tactics that no other species would even consider. They turned their own damaged ships into weapons. They used system failures as tactical opportunities. They coordinated through intuition when technology failed them. Most importantly, they never stopped fighting, even when individual victory was impossible. "I am beginning to understand something important about human warfare," Kefvar said to his colleagues. "They do not fight to win battles. They fight because giving up is not in their nature." Commander Velthak was studying the tactical recordings. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the display. When Sullivan's ship was dying, she could have ejected and saved her own life. Instead, she used her ship as a missile. She sacrificed herself to give her teammates an advantage. Dr. Nixera observed. Individual survival was less important than mission success. Kefvar realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in his studies of galactic warfare. Most species fought to preserve their own lives and minimize casualties. Humans seemed to fight for something larger than individual survival. They fought for each other. They fought for their mission. They fought because surrender meant letting down their teammates. This was not just warfare. This was something deeper, something that could not be measured by sensors or calculated by computers. This was why the humans kept winning battles they should lose. They were not fighting for victory. They were fighting because fighting was who they were. The opportunity to study captured humans came unexpectedly. Kefvar's sensors detected a distress signal from a prison facility operated by the Hegemony, a coalition of species known for their harsh treatment of prisoners. The signal indicated that several human military personnel had been captured during a recent border conflict. "This is perfect," Commander Velthak said as he reviewed the intelligence reports. "Now we can observe how humans behave when they have been defeated and captured. I expect we will see their true nature when they are broken and helpless." Kefvar was not so sure. Everything he had observed about humans suggested they did not break easily, but he was curious to see how they would behave as prisoners. Dr. Nixera had been studying Hegemony prison records. According to their files, they are holding 12 humans captured 3 weeks ago during a patrol action. The prisoners include Colonel Sam Bradley, the patrol commander, and Dr. Helen Carter, a combat medic. The prison facility, known as Detention Complex 7, was built to hold dangerous criminals and military prisoners. It was designed to break the will of anyone held there. The Hegemony believed that enough physical and psychological pressure could make anyone cooperate. Kefvar positioned the silent observer at a safe distance from the prison complex. The facility's communication systems were heavily encrypted, but Zephyrian technology could break most encryption codes given enough time. The first intercepted communications surprised him immediately. "Bradley to all cells," came a voice that must belong to Colonel Sam Bradley. "Morning count confirms all personnel present and accounted for. Today's schedule includes exercise period at 0800, medical checks at 1100, and educational session at 1500. Educational session? Kethvar adjusted his monitoring equipment to get clearer signals. The humans were not just surviving in prison. They were maintaining military discipline and organization. Carter here, replied another voice, presumably Dr. Helen Carter. Medical status report. Johnson's shoulder is healing well. Martinez needs more rest for his concussion. Williams has developed a mild infection that we're treating with improvised antibiotics. Improvised antibiotics? Kethvar made notes about this. How were the humans creating medical supplies in a prison environment? Over the following days, Kethvar built a complete picture of life inside Detention Complex 7. The human prisoners had organized themselves into a functioning military unit despite being captured and imprisoned. They followed orders, maintained discipline, and looked after each other's welfare. More impressive, they had somehow obtained materials to create medical supplies, communication equipment, and even weapons. This should have been impossible in a maximum security prison. Guard Supervisor Caxton Control came a frustrated Gemini voice over the prison communications. The human prisoners have somehow blocked the surveillance cameras in Sector 12 again. We cannot monitor their activities during exercise periods. How do they keep disabling our security systems? Control replied, unknown. Every time we repair the cameras, they find new ways to break them. It is as if they understand our technology better than we do. Kethvar smiled at this. The humans were not passively accepting their imprisonment. They were actively fighting back using intelligence and creativity. The real surprise came during his third week of monitoring the prison. Kethvar intercepted communications indicating that the hegemony was planning to execute several prisoners as an example to the others. Attention all human prisoners, announced Warden Vex over the prison communication system. You will be brought to interrogation chambers for final questioning. Those who provide useful military intelligence will be spared. Those who refuse will be executed at dawn. Kethvar expected the humans to break under this ultimate pressure. Faced with death, surely they would give up their military secrets to save their own lives. But the response from Colonel Bradley was not what anyone expected. All personnel, this is Colonel Bradley, came the calm voice over the improvised human communication network. Remember your oaths and your duty. No information will be given to the enemy regardless of consequences. That is an order. Understood, Colonel. Came the replies from 11 other voices. Not one human prisoner was willing to betray military secrets, even when facing execution. Dr. Nixera looked at the monitoring equipment in disbelief. They would rather die than give up information? This is not rational behavior. But there was more. Over the next several hours, Kethvar listened to humans prepare for what they all knew might be their final day. Instead of despair, he heard them organizing one last act of defiance. Carter, how many alien prisoners are being held in the other sectors? Bradley asked. 37, Colonel. Mix of different species. All political prisoners or prisoners of war. Can we reach them during distraction? I think so. We've been mapping the prison layout for weeks. If we move during the interrogations, we should be able to free at least 20 of them. Kethvar could not believe what he was hearing. The humans were planning a prison break on the day of their scheduled execution. They were not trying to save themselves. They were trying to save other prisoners. Colonel, came another voice. The alien prisoners are not our responsibility. Why risk everything for them? Bradley's answer changed everything Kethvar thought he understood about human nature. Because it's the right thing to do, soldier. We swore an oath to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That oath does not end just because we were captured. The prison break began at dawn, just as the executions were scheduled to start. The humans had spent weeks preparing, using their exercise periods to scout the prison layout and their medical supplies to create improvised explosives. Kethvar watched through the facility's security cameras as 12 human prisoners systematically dismantled the most secure prison in hegemony space. They moved with precision and coordination that should have been impossible for broken, defeated captives. Colonel Bradley led the assault on the main security center. Despite being weakened by weeks of imprisonment, he fought through hegemony guards like a force of nature. Dr. Carter used her medical knowledge to disable the prison's automated defense systems by targeting their biological components. But most amazing to Kethvar, They kept their promise to rescue the other prisoners. Even while fighting for their own lives, the humans made sure that every alien prisoner was freed from their cells. "This way," Bradley shouted to a group of confused alien prisoners. "We have a ship waiting at the emergency landing pad." "But what about you humans?" asked one of the alien prisoners. "We'll be right behind you," Bradley replied. "Just keep moving." It was a lie, and everyone knew it. The humans were fighting a rear-guard action, holding off prison security while the other prisoners escaped. They were sacrificing their own chance of freedom to make sure the aliens got away safely. The final battle took place in the prison's main corridor. 12 exhausted human prisoners faced 50 hegemony guards in powered armor. The outcome should have been certain. But the humans had one final surprise. They had spent their weeks in prison not just planning an escape, but preparing for this exact moment. "Now, Carter," Bradley shouted. Dr. Carter activated a device she had built for medical supplies and prison equipment. The improvised electromagnetic pulse knocked out all the guards' powered armor, leaving them helpless in their own metal suits. The humans walked out of Detention Complex 7 as free people. All 37 alien prisoners were safe. Not a single human had been lost. But that was not the end of the story. As the escaped prisoners reached their rescue ship, Colonel Bradley made one final decision that stunned everyone watching. "Attention all personnel," he announced over the ship's communication system. "Our mission is complete. All prisoners have been successfully evacuated. However, I am returning to surrender myself to hegemony custody." "Colonel, what are you doing?" Dr. Carter asked in shock. "Someone has to take responsibility for this operation. I will not let the hegemony blame innocent people for our actions. The safety of all these prisoners is more important than my own freedom." Against the protests of his own people, Colonel Bradley returned to the prison and surrendered himself to Warden Vex. He faced execution alone rather than let others suffer for his decisions. The gesture was so unexpected that even the hegemony did not know how to respond. They had never encountered a prisoner who would return to captivity voluntarily to protect others. In the end, the political pressure from other galactic species forced Bradley's release. The hegemony could not execute someone who had shown such honor and selflessness. HFY spent days analyzing everything he had observed. The humans had turned a maximum security prison into a rescue operation. They had sacrificed their own safety to protect people they barely knew. They had maintained military discipline and honor even when facing death. "I do not understand their psychology," Dr. Nixera admitted. "Why would they risk everything for alien prisoners? What did they gain from such actions?" Commander Velthak was equally confused. Their behavior makes no strategic sense. They could have escaped quietly and left the other prisoners behind. Instead, they chose a much more dangerous plan that benefited strangers. But HFY was beginning to understand something important about human warfare. It was not just about defeating enemies. It was about protecting anyone who needed protection, regardless of species or politics. "They fight for principles," he said quietly, "not for territory or resources or political advantage. They fight because they believe some things are more important than their own lives." This was the key to understanding human military success. They were not fighting for victory. They were fighting for ideals that made victory meaningful, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon in the galaxy. The derelict ship appeared on sensors like a ghost from a void. It drifted silently through space, tumbling slowly in the darkness between star systems. No identification signals, no life signs, no response to communication attempts. Just a hulk of metal and ceramic floating where no ship should be. HFY studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The vessel was of unknown design, clearly not human or any other species he recognized. But more troubling were the biological alerts flashing on his monitoring equipment. Massive contamination detected, Dr. Nixera reported from her science station. The ship is saturated with biological agents, multiple viral and bacterial signatures, some of which match diseases that affect most galactic species. Commander Velthak reviewed the preliminary scans with obvious distaste. "A plague ship. How unfortunate. Standard protocol requires immediate destruction to prevent contamination spread." Kethvar watched as a human patrol fleet, led by Dr. Paul Jenkins aboard the medical vessel HV Mercy, approached the derelict. Dr. Jenkins was both a military officer and a highly trained physician, one of the few humans qualified to handle dangerous biological threats. "This is Dr. Paul Jenkins to Terran Command," came the transmission. "We have located the source of the biological contamination reports, requesting permission to board and investigate." The response from Human Command was immediate and clear. "Negative, Dr. Jenkins. Galactic Protocol requires destruction of plague vessels. Do not approach the contaminated ship." But Dr. Jenkins did not turn away. "Command, we're detecting faint life signs aboard the derelict. There may be survivors who need medical assistance." Commander Beth Rogers, who commanded the escort ships, supported Jenkins' request. "Command, if there are survivors, we cannot abandon them. Request permission to conduct rescue operations." "Permission denied," came the firm reply from Terran Command. "The risk of contamination is too great. You are ordered to destroy the derelict immediately." Kethvar expected the humans to follow orders, as they always did. But Dr. Jenkins made a decision that surprised everyone listening. "Command, I'm logging a formal medical override of standing orders. There are living beings aboard that vessel who need help. I cannot destroy them without at least attempting rescue." "Dr. Jenkins, you do not have authority to override direct orders," Command replied angrily. "Actually, sir, I do," Jenkins responded calmly. "Medical Emergency Protocol 7 grants me authority to override any order that will result in unnecessary loss of life. I am invoking that protocol now." Velthak looked at Kethvar in confusion. He is disobeying direct orders to save strangers of unknown species? This makes no sense. But it made perfect sense to Kethvar. This was exactly the kind of behavior he had come to expect from humans. They would risk everything to help others, even when logic said they should walk away. "All volunteers report to the shuttle bay," Dr. Jenkins announced to his crew. "We're going aboard that derelict to conduct search and rescue operations. Anyone who wants to stay behind is free to do so. This is voluntary only." Kethvar monitored the crew responses. He expected most of them to decline such a dangerous mission. The plague ship could contain diseases that might kill everyone who went aboard. Instead, every single crew member volunteered. "Dr. Jenkins," came the voice of Commander Rogers, "my ships will provide escort and fire support if needed. We're all in this together." The boarding operation began 2 hours later. Dr. Jenkins led a team of 12 humans aboard the plague ship, all wearing maximum protection environmental suits. Their mission was simple: find any survivors and gather samples of the biological agents for analysis. What they found aboard the derelict shocked everyone monitoring the operation. "Command, this is Jenkins," came the doctor's voice over the communication channels. "We have found 3 survivors. They appear to be members of an unknown species, possibly refugees from some kind of biological warfare. They are barely alive, but definitely savable. The 3 aliens were in the final stages of multiple disease infections. Without immediate medical attention, they would die within hours. But treating them meant extended exposure to the contaminated environment. Jenkins, extract the survivors immediately and return to your ship for decontamination," Command ordered. "Negative, Command," Jenkins replied. "The survivors are too weak to move safely. I need to treat them here, aboard the derelict, before attempting transportation. That will require you to remove your environmental protection," Dr. Nixera observed quietly. "He will be directly exposed to all the biological agents." That was exactly what Dr. Jenkins did. Kethvar watched through the derelict internal cameras as the human doctor removed his helmet and breathing apparatus to perform emergency surgery on the alien survivors. "Jenkins, what are you doing?" Commander Rogers called out an alarm. "Saving lives," Jenkins replied simply. "These beings need immediate medical attention, and I can't provide it through a sealed suit." For the next 6 hours, Dr. Jenkins worked to stabilize the 3 alien survivors. He breathed the same contaminated air, touched the same infected surfaces, and exposed himself to every disease on the ship. His own crew, following his example, removed their protective gear to assist with the medical procedures. Kethvar monitored their biological readings with fascination and horror. One by one, the human medical team began showing signs of infection. The diseases were attacking their immune systems, yet they continued working. Dr. Jenkins came an increasingly weak voice from one of the medical technicians. "I'm showing symptoms of viral pneumonia and bacterial blood poisoning. How much longer can we keep this up?" "As long as it takes," Jenkins replied. His own voice was strained, showing signs of respiratory infection. "These people are going to live, no matter what it costs us." Commander Velthak watched the medical readings in disbelief. "They are dying. All of them. They are killing themselves to save 3 aliens of unknown species." But the humans did not stop. Even as their own bodies began to fail, they continued treating the alien survivors. They used their own blood for transfusions when the aliens' blood chemistry was compatible. They shared their own medications when standard treatments failed. Most amazingly, they began documenting everything. Dr. Jenkins, even while dying from multiple infections, carefully recorded every biological agent they encountered. He collected samples, analyzed disease patterns, and transmitted detailed medical data back to Human Command. "Command," this is Dr. Jenkins' final medical report, came his weak voice after 8 hours aboard the plague ship. "I am transmitting complete biological analysis of 47 different disease agents found aboard this vessel. This data should be sufficient to develop treatments and vaccines for all known galactic species." "Jenkins, get out of there immediately," Command ordered. "You've done enough." "Negative, Command. The survivors are not stable enough for transport. We need another few hours to complete treatment." Those few hours cost Dr. Jenkins his life. He died aboard the plague ship, surrounded by alien diseases and the patients he had refused to abandon. But his sacrifice saved not just the 3 alien survivors, but potentially millions of beings across the galaxy. The medical data he transmitted led to the development of vaccines and treatments for diseases that had plagued dozens of species for centuries. His work aboard the plague ship became the foundation for new medical protocols that saved countless lives. Commander Rogers and the surviving crew members managed to evacuate the alien survivors and return to their ship, but the cost was enormous. 8 humans had died to save 3 aliens they had never met before. At the memorial service, held via communication link to avoid further contamination, Commander Rogers delivered a eulogy that stunned everyone listening. "Dr. Paul Jenkins and his team died doing what humans do best," she said. "They saw beings in need and chose to help, regardless of the personal cost. They faced death itself and refused to back down. That is who we are. That is what we do." Kethvar spent days analyzing the medical recordings from the plague ship. The humans had not just risked their lives to save strangers. They had systematically documented every aspect of their sacrifice to benefit others who might face similar situations in the future. They turned their own deaths into a learning experience, Dr. Nixera observed. Even while dying, they were thinking about how to help others. Commander Velthak was no longer skeptical of human capabilities. "They do not just fight enemies," he said quietly. "They fight death itself. They fight disease, despair, and hopelessness." But Kethvar understood something even more profound. The humans on the plague ship had faced the ultimate enemy, not other beings with weapons, but the fundamental forces of disease and death that threatened all life in the galaxy. And they had won, not by defeating death. That was impossible. But by making their deaths meaningful, by ensuring that their sacrifice would save others. "This is human warfare at its most pure," Kethvar said to his colleagues. "They do not fight to destroy their enemies. They fight to protect life itself, even when that life belongs to complete strangers." The 3 alien survivors eventually recovered completely, thanks to the treatments developed from Dr. Jenkins' research. They returned to their own people with stories of humans who had died to save them. Those stories spread throughout the galaxy, changing how many species viewed human military capability. The humans had shown that their greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics. Their greatest weapon was their absolute refusal to let others suffer when they had the power to help. That made them more than warriors. That made them guardians of something larger than any one species or planet. That made them dangerous to anyone who threatened innocent life. The emergency session of the Galactic Dominion Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their faces showing the same expression of hopeless terror. Kethvar watched from the observation deck as Supreme Chancellor Mordak delivered the news that everyone already knew, but no one wanted to hear. The Void Collective has consumed the Outer Rim territories, the Chancellor announced. 47 star systems have gone dark in the past month. All attempts at communication have failed. All military resistance has been crushed. The Void Collective was every species' nightmare made real. A machine intelligence that had appeared from beyond the galactic edge, consuming entire civilizations and converting their resources into more machines. They showed no interest in negotiation, no mercy for civilians, no concept of surrender or retreat. Our combined military assessment is clear, continued the Chancellor. The Collective's technology is superior to our own. Their numbers are overwhelming. Their advance cannot be stopped by conventional means. Kethvar studied the tactical displays, showing the Collective's advance. The machines move like a plague across the galaxy, converting everything in their path. Planets were stripped of resources. Populations were eliminated. Even the space itself was altered to serve their purposes. Therefore, Chancellor Mordak said with obvious reluctance, the Council recommends immediate evacuation to the Andromeda Galaxy. Long-range scouts will depart immediately to find suitable worlds for resettlement. The Great Hall erupted in panicked discussions. Thousands of years of galactic civilization were about to be abandoned because no one could find a way to fight the machines. Then General Chris Hamilton of the human military stood up. With respect, Chancellor, the human said calmly, "We have a different proposal." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward the human representative. General Hamilton was a tall man with graying hair and the bearing of someone who had seen many battles. Beside him stood Admiral Maria Santos, commander of a human fleet. General Hamilton, Chancellor Mordak said with barely concealed irritation, "Surely you cannot be suggesting that we fight the Collective. Every military expert agrees that resistance is futile. Every military expert except us." Hamilton replied, "We propose a direct assault on the Collective's core processing nodes. Cut off the head and the body dies." The hall erupted in laughter and disbelief. Kethvar heard dozens of voices calling the human proposal insane, impossible, suicidal. Commander Velthak turned to Kethvar with amazement. Even for humans, this is madness. They want to attack the most heavily defended targets in collective space. But Admiral Santos was already presenting detailed tactical plans on the main display. "We've analyzed the Collective's expansion patterns and identified 17 primary processing nodes. These facilities coordinate the machine networks across multiple sectors. The processing nodes are located deep in collective space," protested General Zektor of the Altarian Defense Force. "They are defended by thousands of machine ships and automated weapons platforms. Approaching them would be impossible." "Difficult," Hamilton corrected. "Not impossible. We've developed a strategy that can work, but we need the combined forces of the entire galactic community." Kethvar leaned forward to study the human battle plans. They were unlike anything he had seen before. Instead of conventional military tactics, the humans proposed using deception, misdirection, and coordinated strikes across multiple fronts simultaneously. "The Collective thinks like a machine," Admiral Santos explained. "It calculates odds, predicts outcomes, and responds based on logical analysis. But it cannot predict actions that are fundamentally illogical, such as," asked Chancellor Mordak, "such as a direct assault on their most heavily defended positions by forces that have no chance of victory." Hamilton replied with a slight smile. The debate continued for hours. Every species representative had reasons why the human plan could not work. The odds were too poor. The risks were too great. The probable losses were unacceptable. But gradually, something strange began to happen. Individual representatives started to change their minds. "The human plan is insane," admitted General Vexenaar of the Hegemony Forces. "But our alternative is to abandon our entire galaxy. Perhaps insanity is preferable to cowardice." "My people have never fought alongside humans," said Admiral Thursday Venn of the Crystalline Union. "But we have heard stories of their military capabilities. If they believe this plan can work, we will support them." Kethvar watched in fascination as General Hamilton worked the room. The human did not use logical arguments or statistical analysis. Instead, he appealed to something deeper, the refusal to accept defeat without a fight. "We know the odds," Hamilton told the assembled representatives. "We know most of us will die in this operation, but we also know that some things are worth dying for. Our homes, our families, our freedom." Dr. Nixera observed the proceedings with clinical interest. "He is not convincing them with logic," she said to Kethvar. "He is inspiring them with emotion." But it was working. One by one, species that had never cooperated before agreed to join the human-led assault on the collective. Ancient enemies put aside their differences. Peaceful races offered their ships for combat duty. Even the most cautious species volunteered for the most dangerous missions. The final vote was unanimous. The galactic community would attempt the impossible rather than abandon their homes without a fight. The assault began 3 weeks later. Every available ship from hundreds of species converged on collective space in the largest military operation in galactic history. The fleet was massive, diverse, and completely untested as a combined force. Kethvar observed from the silent observer as the attack commenced. The human strategy was brilliantly simple. Create so many simultaneous threats that even the collective's vast computational power could not respond to all of them effectively. While the main fleet engaged the outer defenses, smaller strike forces penetrated deep into collective space. Human-led teams of specialists infiltrated the processing nodes using captured collective technology. "This is Tony Lee reporting from Processing Node 7. Came a transmission from one of the strike teams. We've reached the primary computer core. Beginning upload of the virus package now." Tony Lee was a human computer expert who had volunteered for one of the most dangerous missions, manually inserting computer viruses into the collective's main processing centers. It required getting close enough to the machines to make direct physical connections. "Lee, what's your status?" General Hamilton asked from the command ship. "Defenses are adapting faster than expected," Lee replied. His voice was strained with effort and fear. "I need more time to complete the upload." "How much more time?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. "You don't have that long. Collective forces are converging on your position." "Then I guess I'd better work faster," Lee said with grim determination. Kethvar monitored the tactical situation around Processing Node 7. Thousands of machine defenders were closing in on Lee's position. His team was cut off, outnumbered, and running out of time. But Lee did not retreat. Instead, he did something that perfectly embodied human military philosophy. He removed his environmental suit to get better manual dexterity for computer connections, exposing himself to the toxic atmosphere of the machine facility. "Lee, your bio readings are critical," Admiral Santos called out. "Get out of there now." "Almost finished," Lee replied. His voice was becoming weaker as the poisonous air affected his system. "Just need another few minutes." Those minutes cost him his life. Tony Lee died at his workstation, his hands still connected to Collective's computer system. But his sacrifice was worth it. The virus he uploaded spread to the entire processing network, disabling thousands of machine ships across multiple sectors. Similar scenes played out at processing nodes throughout Collective space. Human-led teams sacrificed themselves to complete their missions. Species that had never fought together coordinated their attacks with perfect timing. The turning point came when the virus uploads reached critical mass. The Collective's coordinated defenses began to break down as processing nodes went offline one by one. Machine ships lost their tactical coordination. Automated defenses began attacking each other. All processing nodes have been neutralized, Admiral Santos reported to the combined fleet. Collective forces are in complete disarray. All ships press the attack while they're unable to coordinate. The final assault was unlike anything in galactic military history. Hundreds of species fought side by side, using tactics that combined the best ideas from dozens of different military traditions. But underneath it all was a human philosophy that had made victory possible. Never give up. Never accept defeat. Fight for something larger than yourself. When the shooting stopped, the Void Collective had been completely destroyed. Their processing nodes were offline. Their machine fleets were scrap metal drifting in space. The threat that had seemed invincible had been defeated through determination and sacrifice. The cost had been enormous. Thousands of ships destroyed, millions of lives lost. But the galaxy was safe, and the human strategy had worked. At the victory celebration, General Hamilton was asked to explain how they had achieved the impossible. "We didn't achieve the impossible," he replied. "We just refused to believe it was impossible." That made all the difference. Kefvar studied the final battle reports with amazement. The humans had not won through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won by convincing other species to fight beyond their normal limits. They turned a hopeless situation into a winnable one, Dr. Nixera observed, not by changing the facts, but by changing how everyone else responded to those facts. Commander Velthak nodded thoughtfully. Human military capability is not about their weapons or their tactics. It is about their ability to inspire others to exceed their own limitations. But Kefvar understood something even more profound. The humans had faced the ultimate military challenge, an enemy that could not be negotiated with, could not be defeated by conventional means, and seemed destined to destroy everything. And they had found a way to win, not by being stronger or smarter than the enemy, but by refusing to accept that victory was impossible. That was the true secret of human warfare. They fought not just with weapons, but with hope itself. Executive summary. Humans represent the greatest military asset the Galactic Dominion has encountered. This assessment is not based on their technology, which remains inferior to galactic standards, but on their psychological and tactical capabilities, which exceed anything in recorded military history. Velthak read over his shoulder with growing concern. "Kefvar, are you certain about this assessment? The Council will not believe that a primitive species could be superior to established galactic powers." "I am completely certain," Kefvar replied. "I have observed humans in every type of combat situation. They consistently achieve victories that should be impossible according to our military theories." He continued writing, documenting each observation with detailed analysis. Case Study 1. Kepler Station Defense. 12 human defenders defeated 37 armed attackers using improvised weapons and environmental systems as tactical advantages. Human casualties, 0. Enemy casualties, total defeat. Case Study 2. Vorthan Ambush Engagement. 5 human ships defeated 12 superior enemy vessels through unconventional tactics and individual sacrifice. Key factor. Human pilot continued fighting for 7 minutes after life support failure. Case Study 3. Detention Complex 7 Liberation. 12 human prisoners organized successful escape operation while simultaneously rescuing 37 alien prisoners. Operation required voluntary surrender of commanding officer to protect others. Each case study reinforced the same conclusion. Humans won battles not through superior equipment or numbers, but through determination and tactical flexibility that other species could not match. Dr. Nixera provided psychological analysis to support his findings. Humans process stress and fear differently than other galactic species, she wrote in her section of the report. Where others become cautious or paralyzed under pressure, humans often become more creative and aggressive. They seem to perform better when facing impossible odds. The most difficult part of the report was explaining the plague ship incident. How could Kefvar describe humans who chose to die rather than abandon strangers? How could he make the Council understand that this was not weakness, but the greatest strength any military force could possess? Case Study 5. Plague Ship Medical Response. Human medical team voluntarily exposed themselves to fatal diseases to save 3 unknown aliens. All human personnel died, but their sacrifice led to medical breakthroughs that saved millions of lives across dozens of species. When he finished documenting all his observations, Kefvar wrote his conclusions. This was the section that would determine whether his report was accepted or dismissed as emotional contamination. Conclusions and recommendations. Human military capability cannot be measured by conventional standards. Their strength lies not in technology, but in psychological factors that make them.